Hey everyone, um, I'm glad you guys joined. I see lots of guys are still joining in. So for 1 more minute for latecomers, and then we'll start. Hey everyone, hey, it's Yoni here. Um, Thanks a lot for joining this, what I think will be a really great 7.4 webinar. So thanks again for joining. My name is Yoni. Some of you might know me. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders here at ControlUp. We have a packed agenda today. I think you're going to find it quite interesting. So let's quickly review it and then dive into the webinar itself. So we'll start with a quick overview for the sake of newcomers out there or guys who haven't are not familiar with ControlUp before. And then, as usual with ControlUp webinars, we'll focus mainly on live demos. I'm really excited to share the upcoming new features in ControlUp 7.4. I think it's one of the most substantial versions released so far. And I'm especially excited to show you guys the new ControlUp automation engine. It's a highly requested feature for, I think, 99% of our customer base. And I think the results of how we actually implemented it is really great. And the use cases are very interesting. So stay tuned for that part. But 7.4 is more than just the automation feature. So we have some new other stuff coming in. So we'll cover all of them. And towards the end of the webinar, we'll also do a quick cover of the new Insights version we just released. Some housekeeping rules. In addition to myself, we have Yevgeny here in the webinar, one of our lead pre-sale engineers for the EU region. I encourage you guys to ask questions throughout the webinar. Just type them in the questions widget. And Yevgeny will answer them in real time. If we'll see something which might interest the entire audience, Yevgeny will just interrupt and we'll cover that during the show. Okay, so quick overview about ControlUp and what's happening here. So we've been out there for a while. I'm pretty sure most of us know us from the VDI space. We're covering for the last 5 or 6 years. I'm happy to share with you guys that we are experiencing rapid growth, especially in the last couple of years. So nearing the 1,000 customers mark. We are seeing lots of new customers coming in on almost on a weekly basis. The company itself is growing rapidly. We're almost 100 employees here in Israel, where we have the engineering and product divisions, and obviously the HQ is located in San Jose with some of the same biz dev activity. So in a nutshell, we're trying to summarize the ControlUp main use cases. So obviously monitoring, this is something I'm pretty sure all of you are familiar with. We are covering all the major and common commercial VDI and virtualization products out there. So whether it's the leading on-prem solutions like VMware, Citrix, Nutanix, and Microsoft, but we also collaborate with some of the public cloud players like Amazon and Azure. And we can definitely support any VDI or virtual server estate running either on-prem or in the cloud. Besides real-time monitoring, we provide analytics services, mainly via our ControlUp Insights platform, which we will cover at the end of the webinar. And remediation was always a big thing for us. Prior to 7.4, we were mainly doing on-demand remediation via our script-based action feature. And what you will see today is a new approach to remediation, which actually enables auto remediation for many, many use cases in your data centers. So stay tuned for that. I won't spend too much time on the architecture. I think most of you guys are familiar with it, but just in a nutshell, ControlUp is mainly divided into two parts. Components that run on-premises at the customer sites, which are mainly the ControlUp real-time engine and the ControlUp monitor service, and our backend control plane, which includes all the various configuration databases, historical databases, and anything else which covers the ControlUp Insights platform. From a local data collection point of view, we have two major ways to collect data. One is our very own ControlUp agent, which can run inside any Windows device, whether it's physical or virtual, and various API-based or agentless-based data collections. So this obviously includes API connections to vSphere, to Nutanix, Zen Desktop, NetScaler, basically anything we cover via remote API queries. So again, questions on that, feel free to type them in the widgets or contact us later via emails. Okay, so I mentioned the rapid growth. You can see some of the new customers who have joined at 2018. Some big names. Really happy to share that with you guys. Whether it's Aetna or Best Buy or KPMG, you can see the logos here. But I'm not a marketing guy, so I'll skip that real quick. Okay, so the main dish, obviously, live demos. So I'm going to start with some of the new features we added in ControlUp 7.4. I just want to note that we're currently in the beta phase. Anyone who wants to join the beta and test 7.4 can simply send an email to support@controlup.com and we will send you guys the download links. If our plans goes well, the next week we will GA ControlUp 7.4, which means anyone accessing our website will be able to simply download 7.4 via the official download link. Okay, so let's start with the live demo. Okay, so what you're seeing on screen right now, this is the latest ControlUp 7.4 beta version. And the first feature I want to cover is the enhancements we just made to our virtual expert engine. So, those who are familiar with ControlUp from the previous versions, I think we first introduced the virtual expert in 7.2, are familiar with the existing feature set. Essentially, the virtual expert is a feature set that enables easier and more intuitive troubleshooting. And just to do a quick recap, if you're now looking on our hosts via the host view, we can look on some of the stressed cells here, like, for example, the data store read-write IOPS. And by clicking on the visual indication here, we can see the recommendations that are coming from the virtual expert engine for actually finding out what's causing this issue. Right? So trying to focus here okay. So in this case, you can see the virtual expert is suggesting us the next steps in navigation to find the root cause of the issue. Right, and we can either double click the cell to see the next navigation step, or just click on the links which are presented here. Okay, so this is one of the major functions of virtual experts prior to 7.4, essentially making troubleshooting much easier. Now, what we did in 7.4 is we essentially enhanced this engine to also cover recommendations for running remediation and troubleshooting actions in addition to suggesting extra navigation suggestions. Okay, let me try and explain what we did here. So first, I want to quickly recap our script actions feature. So this is something which has been in the works for early days. I bet most of you are familiar with that. So what you're seeing on screen right now is the script actions management screen. Here we can do a few things. We can either browse the community scripts and add them to our organizations or just review what's available. And by looking on the organizational scripts, we can either create our own scripts or manage the existing ones. Okay, and then this has been here for a while. And essentially, customers can use the scripts just like any other ControlUp action and run them on demand against various entities, whether it's sessions, host processes, etc. Now, one thing I want to mention before going back to the virtual expert enhancements is that in the last couple of months, we have made a pretty huge effort, and we expanded the library to include dozens of new scripts. We are working very closely with the CDP community, with the CTA community, with other experts in the virtualization area to actually help us expand the script library. And you can just open this thing here and browse and see what's happening. Again, dozens of new scripts, and some of them we'll show during the live demo today. Okay, so prior to 7.4, customers would be able to right-click on any entity and look on the script action and suggest what makes sense, run what makes sense, and get the additional data or actually try to remediate an issue. Now, the major enhancement in 7.4 that now we can automatically recommend customers or relevant script for the relevant cells they're looking at. So let me explain how this works. We have a new virtual expert setting screens, which serves two purposes. One is to show you guys the previously enabled contextual navigation scripts, rules, sorry. So here is what was available before 7.4. So for example, looking on the host data IOPS metric, you can see that we here recommend to navigate to computer's view and to actually sort the view based on the virtual discrete IOPS code. So this is what's actually enabling the suggestion navigation. New in 7.4 is the script action rule setting. Here we can actually configure the recommended script actions based on the metric you're currently clicking on. Okay, now the cool part here is just like the cloud-based community scripts, we also have cloud-based script action rules. Okay, so out of the box, once you guys will upgrade to 7.4, you will enjoy all these pre-configured script action recommendations. Okay, so you can see we have them available for many of the existing entities. This is, again, work in progress. We always continue to enhance and optimize the script rules. And obviously, you guys as the customers can configure your own rules. So you can, and I'll cover that in a sec. Okay, so this is the behind the scenes setting screen. Let's see how this actually looks like in action. Okay, so again, I'm looking on the sessions view right now. And you guys know that one of the key metrics for VDI sessions is obviously login duration. Okay, and here we have a few sessions with high login duration. Now, new in 7.4, we can click on the blue visual indication here, and our virtual expert will actually automatically suggest the top 5 recommended scripts that can enable you guys to actually get more data about this specific issue. Okay, so obviously for login duration, we'll recommend you to run our favorite analyze login duration script, which can go ahead and display additional phases and to get a better understanding about what's causing a slow logon. But we can also recommend, we recommend other scripts which we think are related to the issue at hand. Okay, another example would be bandwidth last. So this metric here actually shows what's the current bandwidth usage, whether it's PCOIP or HDX sessions. And again, we can click on the recommendation visual indication here, and ControlUp will show us the list of recommended script actions, which in this case can share more insights or more info about this specific metric. Like, for example, if this is an HDX session, we can run the analyze HDX bandwidth script, so we can actually see which HDX channels, whether it's graphics or audio or whatnot, are actually contributing to the high bandwidth usage of this specific session. Okay, so again, the enhancement here is to, now we're not requiring customers to guess which scripts are available or which scripts are relevant. We make it much more intuitive to point you guys to relevant scripts in order to get the most benefit out of this whole system. Okay, I want to show you another example. Let's switch to the processes view. And here, as some of you might know, we have metrics that show what's the current I/O usage for each process in the real-time view. And here we have recommendations. You can see here that one of the script recommendations is to actually run procmon in the background and sample the file access, and this will result in showing you which files are actually being used that caused high I/O usage in this case. Now, this is a really nice example because this is a pretty advanced script which one of our external experts wrote and tested, and it's a good example of how we can use the script recommendation for on-demand, in-depth troubleshooting and finding the root cause of many issues, in this case, high I/O usage of a specific process. Okay, another thing I want to show you, let's look on the free disk space for computers. One nice thing I want to show in regards to the visual indications, let's see if I can show you. Okay, so you can see here we have two cells, right? One shows 4 gigabytes of free space and the other one shows 3.7 gigabytes, which crosses our yellow thresholds. Okay, so in both cases, we have the option to see the recommended scripts. You can obviously see that when the cell is pressed, the indication is more clear with the blue indication. Okay, so the virtual expert suggestion engine will suggest scripts not just for stress cells, but for anything which we have recommendations for. Okay, and there is one last note I want to share with you guys in regards to the virtual expert suggestions. If you go back to the settings screens, I mentioned earlier that you guys can configure your own rules. Okay, so imagine for a sec that you guys have a problematic application, maybe it's an ERP application or a browser or whatnot, and sometimes the process can hang with high CPU due to many files in the app data folder. Just an example. And possibly you guys already have a script that fixes that, but before ControlUp or before ControlUp 7.4, this is a manual task, and you somehow need to educate your tier 1 or helpdesk teams to be aware of the script and know when to run it. So think about this engine here. You guys can go ahead and look at the processes view in this case, and actually add a recommendation based on, for example, a high CPU, and go ahead and select the pre-made script which actually fixes the issue. And once you configure that, when one of your tier 1 or helpdesk guys will go to the processes view, and you will see the relevant ERP app with high I/O usage or with high CPU usage, just by clicking on the visual indication, you will be able to see the script that you guys have suggested and intuitively fix the issue. Okay, so you can look at this from two angles. One, the ControlUp offered suggestions, which will be enhanced over time, and B, as an internal mechanism to propagate or intuitively suggest remediation actions for your internal. Okay, so that's the first major enhancement in 7.4, the ability to share, to recommend on script actions using the virtual expert engine. Okay, the second scenario I want to cover, which is the last before the automation engine, is the new user experience metrics we have added in 7.4. So for that, let's focus on a specific RDS folder here, if you don't mind. Okay, so prior to 7.4, we already have many interesting KPIs or metrics in regards to monitoring user experience. I bet you're all familiar with login duration, application load time, latency, etc. So these are great metrics to figure out, what's the user experience, whether it's due to slow logons or slow loading apps or the remoting protocol latency. One of the drawbacks of KPIs like login duration and app load time is that these are metrics which are happening either once or a few times during the session lifecycle, right? So obviously log duration, it's very important. We all know that it affects the perception of how the VDI endpoint behaves, but it's happening once early during the logon phase. And you know, after that, it's not very easy for us as VDI admins to figure out what's the ongoing experience for each and every VDI user. And this is where the new user input delay metrics kicks in. Okay, so this is a new user experience metrics in 7.4. We have it available for sessions for each process, each app, and also for as an average for each computer. And this is actually a newly introduced metric for Microsoft, and I want to quickly show you what Microsoft did here, which I think is actually a great addition to the VDI stack. So let's see if we can here, just a sec. Okay, so this is an official KV article from Microsoft which explains the new user input delay performance metrics. And I think it's one of the best metrics Microsoft added in the recent years because what it does essentially, it measures how long does it take for a user input, which is essentially a keyboard stroke or a mouse click, how long it takes for the application to actually recognize the inputs and process it. Okay, so A, it's generic. It will work for any VDI solution, whether it's Citrix-based, VMware, etc. And B, it will be reported ongoing, right? So it's not just reported initially or when you launch the app, it's being reported all the time while users are working with the application. So you know, it's great to figure out what's the experience using this specific metric. And let me show you how it looks like in ControlUp. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay, so let me drill down to this specific session here, and let me show you what it looks like. Okay, so here, you know, we have, you can see we have a, let's close the tools pane here. Okay, so here we have an Adobe app with a pretty intense 3D module running inside an RDS 2019 RDP session. Okay, this just happens to be the session displayed here in ControlUp. Okay, so you can see that currently, you know what, let's click here so you guys can see the user input delay for the session itself. Okay, so I'm going to play a bit with the 3D model here, and this should report in real time the user input delay back to ControlUp. Okay, so you can see I'm playing with the model, I'm trying to move it a bit, and you can see in real time, you can see the user input delay jumping from 0 milliseconds to a bit more than 3 seconds here, or even 4 seconds, which is not that great, and this is because it's a pretty intense app, which requires a lot of CPU cycles, as you can see here. Okay, so again, during the session lifecycle, when we play with an application, ControlUp will report in real time, in milliseconds, what is the exact delay for each app running here. In this case, this is Adobe. If I'll go back to the Explorer view, you will see that's the same metric for Explorer Exit, for the desktop shell. Okay, now it's jumping to 600 milliseconds, etc. Okay, so this is again a great real-time ongoing metric to figure out what's the current user experience for each and every VDI user we monitor via ControlUp. Okay, obviously the experience is not great, but we'll soon see how ControlUp can help with that in addition. But in regards to monitoring user experience, I think this is by far the best metrics to watch for with the new edition. Okay, now one note here: this is supported on Server 2019 and on the latest Windows 10 versions, starting from 1809. And this is obviously due to Microsoft limitations, right? It's not something ControlUp related. Now, it's important to notice that these metrics are fully supported with the entire range of ControlUp features, right? So these can be configured via incident triggers, and you guys can get notifications if these go above certain thresholds. And we are going to upload these metrics to Insights for accommodating new reports in our reporting platform.
Hey, Yoni, there's a good question that someone asked here from the panel. So the question is that metric available for all VDI platforms, means RDS, Citrix, Horizon View, etc.? So that's a good question for everyone to know.
Yeah, that's a great question. And as I mentioned here while we were looking on the Microsoft KB article, because this actually looks on the process level, it's a kernel-based metric looking on process running inside Windows. It's completely generic. So it will work with any VDI solution out of the box. We have tested it with Citrix, with Zen Desktop, with Horizon, and with RDP. So yeah, it will work on any VDI. Okay, so assuming there are no additional questions here, let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so the next feature I want to cover, which is probably the biggest one in 7.4, is the new ControlUp automation engine. Okay, and before I'll go to the actual live demos, I want to quickly cover the way it's working behind the scenes in ControlUp 7.4. Okay, so what you see here, this should be familiar to basically any ControlUp customer. So we have the on-premises components, which is again the ControlUp monitor service. The ControlUp monitor service is continuously connected to all the relevant data sources, whether it's the ControlUp agents, data collectors, and whatnot, and obviously continuously monitor the thresholds and metrics coming in from all the data sources. In addition, the monitor service is connected to our configuration database, which is hosted in the cloud for cloud-based customers or on the ControlUp on-premises server for on-prem customers. And one of the items which is being saved in the ControlUp database is the ControlUp incident triggers and the new ControlUp automation rules. Okay, so let's quickly look on the flow here. So just click here. Okay, so let's assume for a sec we have a trigger in place which is watching over the free disk space on the C drive. And we have a trigger in place which looks on that specific metric and it should fire if the free space is falling below 5 gigabytes. Okay, so it's happening right now, right? So the agent reports back to the monitor that the metric has dropped. And what will happen now, since the monitor is aware of the trigger and CA rule configuration, which includes the instruction to run a remediation script once this incident trigger is met, the next step will be for the monitor to launch a request to the relevant agent to run the automated action job. Okay, it will run in this case on the agent itself. It will run the remediation scripts, and then the agent will report back the script outputs back to the monitor service. And finally, if this is configured, this is an optional step, the monitor service will email the script results to the ControlUp account recipients. Okay, so again, in a nutshell, the ControlUp automation platform is made of two major components. One is a trigger, an incident trigger rule, and the other one is a script action. And essentially, the automation platform ties in these two components, the trigger setting and the script automation, and it will automatically kick in the script once the incident trigger is met. Okay, so this is what's happening behind the scene, and let's cover a few interesting use cases here. Okay, so now let's close Slack. You guys shouldn't see. I guess you're not familiar with. You should see the Slack. Okay, never mind. Okay, so the first use case I want to cover directly relates to what we have seen in the previous example, where we actually launched a pretty massive Adobe application, and we have seen that the response is not that great. And let's see how we can use ControlUp to actually help here. Okay, so let's look on the trigger we have configured in this specific case. Okay, so what I'm looking here is I'm looking on a trigger that is going to watch over the new user input delay metric for specific applications. And if it will cross a certain thresholds, we're going to launch a script that will basically increase the process priority and will enable this specific application to get, get faster access to the CPU in order to increase the process performance. Okay, so let's look on how this actually looks like. Okay, so we are looking on a process-based trigger because we're looking on applications. This is the filter, okay? It's quite simple in a sense. We're looking directly on the user input delay metric for each and every running process. And if it's higher than 100 milliseconds and the application name, the process name matches one of these options here, Acrobat Reader or one of our ERP application, then the trigger will fire. Okay, so again, a very simple exercise. If the user input delay is higher than 100 milliseconds and it's matching the names here, fire the trigger. Okay, now this is the new addition in 7.4. This is what's actually enabling our automation engine. So we have a new follow-up action here, which actually enables us to run a script action. Okay, we can choose any of the enabled script actions from our internal library. In this case, we have attached a script called VE set process priority to above normal. Okay, so I'm going to enable this trigger right now. And I also want to show you the script before we'll actually simulate this specific scenario here. Okay, so we are enabling the trigger, and I want to show you how the script action looks like, which is going to automatically run once we meet this specific incident trigger condition. Okay, so let's look on script actions. So it's VE dash, sorry. Issue here. Oh, okay. Okay, so this is the script action we are going to automatically execute once we meet the trigger requirement. So it's a very simple script running against the process we identify via the trigger. We are mapping the process ID in order to identify the specific app in case. And the script is quite simple. It's a two-line PowerShell script, which will actually increase the process priority from normal to above normal, as you can see here. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how this is working in real time. So I'm going to launch the Adobe application. And as you can see here, let me open the right file. You can see here that in the real-time view, we have the process itself, and we also have the process priority, so we can see if it's actually changing once we'll meet the incident trigger requirements. Okay, so the 3D module is loading. It will take a few seconds. It's pretty intense. And it should be loaded right about now. I'm going to hide the tools pane so we can see it a bit bigger. Okay, so I'm going to play now with the 3D module. Okay, you will see that Adobe Reader is currently crossing the 100 millisecond threshold we configured in the trigger. And if everything works fine, the script should kick in and increase the process priority to above normal. Okay, it might take a few more seconds. Let's see if the demo gods love us today. So we'll play with this a bit. We'll see if the threshold is met. And there you go. You can see the priority is now increased to above normal, and that's directly due to the automation script we just configured. And now we have faster access to the CPU, and we can actually get better user experience from this specific application. Okay, so that's great. It's working really nice. We can actually also look on the event log on the monitor service, and we can see the auditing event, which just fired the VE set post priority to above normal on this specific application, which met the threshold conditions. Okay, so one, I think, really great use case of how we can use the ControlUp automation platform to detect performance issues based on any metric and run the relevant script to either get additional data or, in this case, even optimize the user experience. Okay, so I
Yoni, another good
Yeah.
question from the crowd over here regarding this module. The prospect is saying that this module is great, but is there a security policy or a delegation that we can delegate for end users to do or not to do perform this automation?
Yeah, great question about how we actually are enabling a delegation of configuring automation reactions. So we actually took this very seriously. We added lots of rules and security precautions in order to make sure that only dedicated admins are able to configure automation rules. So if we have new performance policies in place, whether it's the create automated actions policy, and we have an even automation policy for each and every script action. So yeah, the answer is yes, you can totally delegate the ability to A, create automated actions, and B, automate specific scripts based on any AD user groups you have configured in your environment. So yeah, for sure, it's highly secured and highly customizable. Okay, so I want to move on to the next use case, which is, essentially we kind of categorize the automation use cases into three categories. The first one, which we already show one example, and I want to share with you now another example, is performance metric based automation. Okay, so essentially it means that we're looking on performance metrics, and if they cross a specific threshold, we can fire an automation script to remediate or troubleshoot the issue. Okay, we have two more categories, but we'll cover them in the next few minutes. So let's look on the automating low disk space issues. This is pretty simple, but I think it's very useful for any customer out there who's looking on this webinar. So let's see how this looks like. Let's go back to the computers view and look on a specific computer called VSci Launcher in this case. Okay, so let me show you what I have in place here, and I think you guys will appreciate this. So we have a trigger in place. It's called automated action computer delete temp files. Let's see what's happening here behind the scenes. So this is obviously looking on the computer entity, and the trigger is very, very simple. We're looking on the free space on system drive metric, and we're looking on it if it's going below 5 gigabytes. Okay, that's it. We have this running ongoing for all the computers in our network, and if it drops below 5 gigabytes, the trigger will kick in. And as you can see here, we have tied in the AAC delete temp files script action to this specific trigger. Okay, let's see how this script looks like. It's again a very simple script. You guys can obviously automate it and expand that. Here it's very simple. We're simply enumerating files found under ctemp and deleting them. Okay, so essentially what should happen here, every time one of our managed computers, the free space in the system drive falls below 5 gigabytes, the script should automatically kick in and delete all the files in ctemp. You guys can obviously use a more sophisticated scripts and also trigger the Windows updates cleanup tool, or any other thing which can help to free space on the system drive. So let's see how this looks like live. Okay, so this is the VSI launcher. This is the same computer we're seeing here on the grid, and as you can see right now, the free space is a little higher than 5 gigabytes. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to actually launch a PowerShell script that will create a file in ctemp, and it should bring the free space below 5 gigabytes, which should trigger the script, which should eventually clear the temp file and fix the issue. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a file. It should be created here, and it should drop the free space below 5 gigabytes. Okay, so there you go. Now the free space is lower than 5 gigabytes. It should trigger the automated action, and indeed you can see here that the script was launched and it cleared the ctemp file and the issue was remediated. Okay, and again we can go back to the event log, and we can see the actual auditing event that enabled us to clear the free space. Okay, so a very simple use case, but I think it's, the way I see it, this is an automation rule which should be included in every environment, maybe only for production servers, and obviously you can make the script more sophisticated, but it should ensure you guys, avoiding issues with free space on system drive. You can also configure this to send you an email notification when this is happening, in addition to the event log we have just seen. Okay, another use case, which is again related to performance metrics, but I think this is a bit more sophisticated, and many of you would find this interesting. So I actually have a video demo for this, because if we'll do this live, we'll have to have a 5 hours webinar. So what we have here is actually a way to automate custom disconnected idle timers. Okay, so as many of you know, especially guys who are working with RDSH for a long time, RDSH enables you guys to configure policies for idle and log off timers, which means, for example, you can say that if a session is idle for 1 hour, we can disconnect it, and if a session is disconnected for 5 minutes, we can log off it. And it's something that I think any customer is configuring in order to save resources and make the entire environment more efficient. One of the drawbacks of this method is that the policies are on the computer level. Okay, and if you have, for example, an RDS silo or an RDS farm which service a few applications, sometimes we want to configure different idle and disconnect timers for different apps. And it's not doable today unless you configure different silos for different apps, which is usually not ideal. So I want to show you how we can use the new ControlUp automation and trigger mechanism to actually enable different disconnect and idle timers for different apps. So we have the video here. Let's go ahead and play that. Okay, so here you can see we have 2 different apps in place. We have Hyperspace and Meditech. These are 2 medical rated applications. On the server level, we have 8 hours and 2 hours disconnect and idle timeout. Now, what we did in ControlUp, we actually configured different timers based on the app itself. Okay, so you can see here the Hyperspace is currently starting to be idle, 1 minute. Once it will reach the ControlUp configured idle limit, we will disconnect the session, but only for the Hyperspace applications. You can see Hyperspace is disconnected, but the other applications are not affected from this specific timer. Okay, and here we can see the disconnect timer kicks in again for a specific app, in this case Meditech, and we're going to go ahead and log off it once it will reach this specific app timer. Okay, so I think this is opening many use cases for ControlUp. In this case, this is something we heard from customers. They said they wanted to be able to configure different idle and disconnect timeouts based on the application and not the server silo. And here you can see it in action, right? And it's working really great. We already have it actually running in some beta sites right now. And I think this would make your RDSH environment more efficient without sacrificing any of the flexibility coming in from the computer-based GPO policies. Okay, so moving forward, I want to share with you guys two last use cases for automation, which covers the 2 other categories I mentioned. So one is event-based automated action. So this is a pretty cool category. Essentially, the idea is to configure automation rules which are based on specific events, which usually indicates on a specific issue. Okay, so again, we have incident triggers, which are looking on specific events being created on one of our managed computers. And we can now with 7.4, we can tie in a remediation action to automatically fix an issue. So I have a nice example here. Let me show you. This is one of the KB articles from Citrix. In this case, we have an issue where the VDA might fail to register if the performance counters are corrupted. Okay, and luckily for us, the symptom is a very specific event which indicates on that specific issue. Now here Citrix are actually offering the solution. They say when this happens, go ahead and run the LOD-CTR/R command, which should rebuild the performance counters and enable the desktop service to properly register against the DDC. Okay, so for us, this is an excellent use case for automation. So here is what I did in my system. I have a new trigger called Citrix VDA Rebuild Performance Counters. It's an event-based trigger. So it's looking on this specific configuration. We're looking on Citrix Desktop Service Source, Evenity 1002, and the application log, which is similar to what we see here. And whenever we will detect this specific event being created on one of the servers, we'll go ahead and run the rebuild performance counters script actions. Okay, which is essentially running the LOD-CTR/R action. Okay, we can obviously make it more fancy and also automatically restart the VDA, the desktop service, once we do that, to completely automate the remediation of the registration issue. Okay, so this is one example, but I think it's a good example for this category, and it will enable us to essentially automate anything which is manifested by a specific event ID. Okay, we have other use cases in place. We're going to showcase them at Synergy and future webinars, but I think you guys are quite familiar with known issues in your environment which can be identified by event IDs, and now you can automate the remediation using the new ControlUp automation engine. Okay, so the final category of use cases is what we call augmented troubleshooting. And what we mean by that is essentially a family of use cases where we can use ControlUp to detect an issue, and then using this automated script action, we can get much more info about that specific incident or specific issue, and forward that to the helpdesk team or the any ticketing system you guys have in place. Okay, so we chose one, I think, nice example for this category, and in this case, we're going to show you how we can automate creation of ServiceNow tickets for slow logons, and actually provide very full details inside the ServiceNow tickets, which will make the issue remediation much more simple. Okay, so let's look. This is actually slides because I don't have ServiceNow in my environment, so I have a few slides here. So obviously, just like the other use cases, it all starts with an incident trigger. So here we have a trigger that will actually fire whenever the session login duration is higher than 30 seconds. Okay, so whenever someone logs onto the system and the login is slower than 30 seconds, which it's a bit brutal, you guys can obviously configure it for a higher value. The incident trigger will go ahead and run the ServiceNow login duration incident. Okay, now this is a script, a PowerShell script, which is utilizing the ServiceNow API to automatically open a ServiceNow ticket and to use the script output to populate the ticket with all the relevant data. So here I have the ServiceNow ticket, which was automatically created, and you can see here the ticket includes in the description the analyzed login duration output, which if you think about it, this is really great, right? Because someone logs on, there is a slow logon, we automatically open a ticket for the relevant helpdesk team, and we include in there all the fine grade troubleshooting data which can pinpoint to the root cause. Okay, in this case, it happens to be printer mappings which slow down the login process. Okay, and this is again just an example. You can use this method to basically create tickets in any ticketing system, whether it's a SCOM, ServiceNow, or any other ticketing system, or you can simply send direct email to your team. You can bypass the ticketing system and use the incident trigger to send an email with the script output, which will serve to visualize the additional troubleshooting information we got from ControlUp. Okay, so that was, I think, a fairly exhaustive, kind of like overview of the new automation engine in 7.4, some of the use cases we have ready for you guys. I think, this is pretty much dependent on how our customers will use that. We're going to offer additional scripts and additional built-in automation or incident triggers from the cloud services to inspire ideas. But you guys can take it whenever you want, whether it's, automating remediations, troubleshootings, or optimizations, just like you've seen here. There is one cool thing I want to share with you guys. This is something which is going on for a while now. We have a contest in place. We're going to announce the winner at Synergy, which is actually next week. And the contest essentially encourage you guys, our customers, to submit scripts. Okay, you can use the URL here to submit your scripts. We're going to choose one winner, which we know from our perspective was the best script in regards to ControlUp automation. This winner will be announced at Synergy, and the prize is quite substantial. So again, I encourage you guys to go ahead and submit scripts if you have any decent ideas in mind. Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to quickly cover the new Insights release, which was actually released 2 weeks ago. This was mainly an infrastructure release. So we improved the ControlUp Insights backend, and it's now enabling us some pretty cool use cases which weren't available in previous Insights versions. Okay, so the major enhancements are actually displayed on screen. We now have a much shorter delay from the moment we upload the data via the ControlUp monitor until it's available in Insights. I will show that in the live demo. The queries are much faster. And other thing which I know lots of customers were asking for is 5 minutes granularity throughout the entire, data lifecycle you guys have via your license. So let me demo that real quick. So let's log into Insights. I'm going to log on obviously to our demo environment here. So let's start with the data delay. So I'm going to choose one of the reports which can actually show me what's the current delay. Session count, I think, is a good example. And I'm going to look on the last 4 hours of data, and you should see here that currently in Israel the time it's almost 1 p.m. Okay, and you can see here that the last data point is 12:05, so it's 50 minutes delay. So today it's already in production. It's relevant for all customers. The delay should be no longer than 1 hour. Okay, and I know back then we have seen greater delay, whether it was 2, 3, or even 4 hours. So this is vastly improved, and we're going to improve it even further in the next couple of weeks. We're aiming for up to 30 minutes delay in Insights. Faster queries, you can test it yourself. I think you will enjoy the new performance. Let's look on the 5 minutes resolution because I think this is really cool. So I'm going to look on one specific computer. Let's look on one of the servers we have here in ControlUp demo. Oops, sorry. So let's look on CURDSH01, and we're going to look on 1 month worth of data. So by default, when you guys look on computers or hosts or even sessions and you use the 1 month time frame, we're displaying 1 data point every hour. Okay, so let me just bring this back. So I'm going to bring it again. Okay, so I'm looking on the 1 month graph here, and as you can see, we have quite a few spikes over the last month worth of data. But since we're looking on a pretty long time frame, you can see we have a data point every 1 hour. Okay, 4, 5 a.m., etc. Now, sometimes you guys want to go back to the 5 minutes resolution in order to better investigate a peak. In this case, we have a peak here on, let's say, May 1st. Okay, so what I can do, I can go ahead and choose May 1st here, which is May 1st from, let's say, 3 a.m. to May 1st at, let's choose 11 p.m. Okay, and I'm going to submit this, apply this. So ControlUp will show me that specific time frame, but now, because I have selected the time frame which is shorter than 2 or 3 days, we are again looking on the 5 minutes raw data in Insights. Okay, so even though this is from 2 weeks ago, we still have access to the 5 minutes granular data. And you can always click on a data point and see the top 5 processes back in time which were causing the issue. Okay, so I think it's a major enhancement to insights. Faster queries, shorter delay, and obviously access to 5 minutes data back in any time points while you still, where you have the license for. Okay, so go ahead and try Insights. It's working really great now, and encourage everyone to test it themselves. Okay, Yevgeny, unless you have any other questions from the audience at this point. Okay, I see Evgeny has covered everything in real time, which is great. So guys, I want to thank you a lot for the time. I really enjoyed that. Hopefully you've seen the power of the new ControlUp 7.4, the new Insights version. I think there are lots of great things coming. Again, beta is happening this week. GA should be happening next week. Go ahead, test that. Have a great day, and we'll chat soon. Thank you.